But then there's also the other layer that we have six human beings in a room and we bring our own baggage, that imposter syndrome or those negative thoughts that could be in our head, and we bring that to the session room. And if I, as a coach, can understand, well, maybe Susan has her number one saboteur is hyperachiever, and Frank over here, their number one saboteur is victim. They couldn't be more polar opposites. But if I can see that and understand it, it allows me to ask questions in a different way in order to facilitate the group to a decision.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Sonya Jury. Sonya earned a bachelor's degree in architecture from the University of Kansas and spent most of her career as an architect, both on the staff of several large architectural firms and as an entrepreneur with her own architectural company. She is currently a certified EOS implementer with her own company. She is also the author of a book titled Mom Forgot My Birthday, A Daughter's Journey Through Alzheimer's. You can learn more about Sonya at businesssherpa.org. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Sonya.
Sonya, welcome to the Corporate Couch today.
Thanks, Jeff. I am super happy to be here today.
We were introduced back in 2022 by Jennifer Bergman, who I still can't, I'm chasing her to get her on the podcast, but I know she took a job outside of Kansas City, so it's a little harder, but she's great. And then we reconnected at the Crux event where John Hall, who I just published his episode last week, gave a talk that was great. So and I love your energy, and you're one of the few people that on a first meeting I had a meal with. So you and I went to North Italian restaurant in Leawood, Kansas, and broke bread on our first meeting. And since I'm an Italian and a foodie, we had an immediate bond. So there you go.
Some good food and great conversation. And I just learned that they expanded out there. So maybe you and I need to venture out back and go check it out.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm half joking, but I want to maybe do a different podcast about dive bars and great restaurants, but we'll see if that ever happens. But and I have to give you kudos. You're the first architect to ever be on the Corporate Couch. So look, there's another first out of my 100-ish guests that have been on. So, but let's start with a fun question. So even that people that know you fairly well, Sonya, what one thing would surprise them about you?
People think that I am an extrovert. And as I've ventured into my EOS journey, I think I'm finding myself more of an introvert than I ever thought that I would be. That has really surprised me. Just, taking a moment to look yourself in the mirror. I'm like, am I an extrovert or am I an introvert? And I think the older that I've gotten, I realize that I am more of an introvert. And I really love just kind of quietly sitting and listening to what other people have to say, hearing really what they're trying to say, if that makes sense. Be attentive in listening, asking curious questions, and learning more about them as a person.
it was a page on your website. You gave your assessments, Colby and Culture Index. You and I are both rainmakers
Yep.
in Culture Index, so that was interesting. And I know you're help entrepreneurs, and you're a high 7 on Colby Fast Start, so that's very entrepreneurial. So yeah, we can get into that too, and also strategic in Strength Finders. I don't know if that's your number one strength, but that's not my number one strength. So besides our love for food and Italian food, we're pretty similar in some
We
ways.
we could be dangerous together, is what you're saying.
I think we could.
Yeah,
uh,
I think so.
So I started reading your book, and we're going to talk about that later. But it looked like you grew up outside of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, my parents we were all born in Kentucky, and my dad, when he graduated from Western Kentucky University, accepted a position with International Harvester, and my parents and all of us, we moved to Ohio, and we just moved around a lot every couple of years back in the day when they had company stores. And so that's what we did. And then in 78, my dad got the call to become the combine specialist for Kansas because of the wheat and the wheat harvesting. And they moved us out here. So I've lived in Kansas City since 1978, and I consider it my home. I wasn't born here, but it's my home.
Yeah. So what was fun for you growing up? What you loved doing as a kid?
Just being outdoors and being creative. And we always lived out in the country. And my brother always had motorbikes and mini cycles and things of that nature. And so I would make sure I always had to ride the bus as a kid. And I would get all my homework done on the bus ride home because it was usually about an hour. And
Wow.
then by the time I got home, my homework was done and I'd dump everything and be like, Mom, I'm going to go hop on the mini bike. And she's like, okay, be careful. And, I would just go off and riding. And I mean, I have to laugh because we didn't wear helmets.
Right.
Yes, I had tennis shoes on and, typically long pants. Cause when you're riding a mini bike through the soybean fields of Ohio, it can hurt, if you know
Right.
what I mean.
Right.
And yeah, I would just go hang out outside and I
Wow.
loved it. I loved playing basketball horse with my brother and beating him. So that was fun.
Oh, wow. Can you still beat
Yeah.
your brother in horse?
We haven't done that in probably 35 years, so I have no idea. That would be a good rematch, wouldn't it? Um, but yeah, just
Yeah.
being creative and that creativity and always making things,
Yeah.
that's what led me to become an architect.
Okay, yeah, let's chat about that. So you went to University of Kansas and graduated with their, I don't, is it architectural degree? I don't know what the actual degree is. So from an early age, you said, I'm going to be an architect. Was that the plan?
No, that's the ironic thing. I did not know. In high school, I went to Olathe High, and when they had a senior program to go to the neighboring colleges, we did not go to K State. I don't know why. We went to KU. And I just remember walking through the School of Business because that's what I thought I was going to do. And I walked through there and I thought, I cannot go to business school. This would not be a good fit for me. But then when we walked through the architecture, Marvin Hall, I thought, oh my goodness, this is my people. I can do this. And so yeah, so I took the leap, and they accepted me. It's a 5-year program. 5 years later, I walked out with a Bachelor of Architecture degree, and I didn't look back.
Interesting. So what was the vibe like in the business school? Why was it so much different? Just the people, or what was the?
Yeah, just the people, and it was the old business school. So nothing exciting about the building whatsoever, just room after room after room. And
Yep.
I don't know, there just didn't seem to be a lively vibe going
Yep.
on in the business school. And when you walk through an architecture school, you'll walk into the jury spaces, and there's models there that the students have built, or there's drawings of floor plans and elevations and renderings hanging up on the wall, and it was just so in life.
Right.
It was almost like the building was breathing. Business school did not have that. I think it does now, the new one, but
Yeah, actually, yeah, I taught there last year, spring semester of 23, and yeah, it's a brand new. Well, now I think it was finished in 2017 or 2018, the Cap
Right.
Fed. Yeah, it's a beautiful building. But it's, I love that you said that about why you made that decision, because I tell, I coach few recent college graduates periodically on how to get a job and how to build relationships and help people and, be prepared for interviews and pick companies. And I said, you're just starting your career, so you hardly know what you want to do or what type of company, but you can feel a company's energy when you walk in it, as well as just reading a description of it. And I just say, go with the companies that resonate with you, to start a target list, as well as when you go in there to interview, you can tell, do you like how it feels or don't you? And it means something.
Jeff, you are absolutely right. And kudos for you for mentoring. When young architects ask me, what mentoring ideas and thoughts, I always say you need to work for a small, medium, or large architectural company because they're all different. And then decide which one gives you what you need to grow as a human, as an architect, and the types of projects. Because a small business is not the same as a really large business. And then the medium can be, in between. But I
Right.
think it's really important that you find a fit that works for you.
Yeah, I agree. I tell them the same thing. There's no difference in terms of your decision to work for a small or big company. I said, a big company, you're getting highly trained in a narrow area, and in a smaller company, you're going to do more work. You're going to get more broad experience, but not as deep. So, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all where you're supposed to be. So, very, very
Ex-
interesting. This shows what a shallow interviewer I am. What did you do in 1988 when the KU Jayhawks beat Oklahoma for the NCAA basketball title? Where were you? Did you go to Westport in Kansas City and party? What did you do after that game?
Yes, and yes. So, ironically, the University of Kansas School of Architecture, they had just started a new program. It is no longer in existence, unfortunately, and it was called the Kansas City Architecture Option. So, what it allowed, there were probably 15 of us in that studio, and we worked and lived in Kansas City. So, all of our classes were here, and we were focused on architecture in Kansas City and really thinking about architecture as a whole, with the city, from an urban design, urban planning, buildings. And our professor at the time, Glenn Leroy, he made us, how some of the Chamber of Commerce's, they have those leadership classes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
He developed a leadership class. That was what our studio was. And he would introduce us to these community safety network people, like the Salvation Army and Goodwill, or we would go and visit the justice centers. And so he gave us a different perspective as an architect, understanding what goes into a community, the architecture that goes into a community. And then, how can an architect change the outcome of a said community? So that was that piece. And it so happened we were in, it was in McCoy's. My friend I'm sorry, my friend Neil and I, we were at McCoy's. It was our class, and we were watching the game, and they won, and we just kind of looked at each other like, "Holy shit!" And I mean, and everybody like paid their bill, and everybody went outside in Westport and was
Oh
jumping
yeah.
around, hooting and hollering, and
Yeah.
it was pretty. I mean, it was epic
Yeah.
and I'm proud that I can say I walked down the hill with, Danny and the Miracles.
Right.
And the other claim to fame, one of my college classmates, the pay heed to all that enter, beware of the
Right.
fog.
Oh yeah.
Mike and Todd created that in one of our structural classes.
Wow.
Mike was over there sketching out something, and he looked at Todd and he's like, "Hey, I got something here. What do you think?" And he's like, "That's a great idea." So they made it
Yeah.
and they threw it up there, and the janitor's like, "This is awesome. Let me help you put it up there."
Oh my God.
And the rest is history.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Just a short aside, me and my roommate at the time, we scalped tickets for that 88 game, and we sat separately. It was like right before the game, so we watched it, and I might have bumped into you in Westport that night. So, but anyhow, it was a phenomenal game. Danny was great, and the Miracles. So, but let's get back to we could talk basketball and now.
We could,
Um,
couldn't we?
so tell the audience how you got your first job out of when you graduated, walked down the hill, and how'd you get the first job, and what was that like?
Sure. Well, because I had done the KU fifth year architecture program in Kansas City, I actually had landed an internship the previous summer. And when I found out that KU was going to do it, I went to my company, Architects Consortium here in Kansas City, and I said, I would like to stay and work if you will have me for the next year. And they said, absolutely. And so I did that. And then when I graduated, I kept working for them. And then I wanted to move to St. Louis for love, if I can say that.
Sure, you could. It's,
And so, yeah, so that's what I did. And I started looking for sending out my resume and looking for jobs back then, because back then there was no World Wide Web. It was the
right.
pick up the phone, you
Yeah.
write a resume, a cover letter,
Newspapers,
you send it.
job
Yeah,
ads in newspapers. What's a
yeah.
newspaper?
And so I got a job with Amada Reed Associates on the landing in St.
Oh,
Louis, and worked in St. Louis for a couple of years, then got married, moved to Indianapolis, worked for HNTB in Indianapolis, and then we decided to move back to Kansas City and came back to Kansas City.
yeah. So you worked for it looked like from like 88 to 97, three different firms, as you
Mhm.
said, St. Louis, Indianapolis. But then you start your own architectural firm, it seems, Jury Design in 97. So what was the impetus behind that?
Well, I was working my butt off. I was the project architect at the time working on Menorah Medical Center. And I was, like I said, I was working 12, 14-hour days. I was not as happy as I could have been with the company I was working for, because they were not investing back into the company, if that makes sense. And they were not investing their profits back in and buying us computers and things of that nature. And I just thought, you know what? I'm using my own computer here to work for somebody else. This is kind of silly. Why don't I just hang out my own shingle? And that's what I did. And I was able to reach out to a couple of my existing clients, and I just said, I'm leaving and I'm starting my own business. I was just informing them. I was not trying to take them. And they said, well, we want to go work with you. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. And so the rest is, I just started working in the business. And Jeff, I'm an EOS implementer, and I just wonder if my trajectory would have been different had I found out about EOS back in 1997,
Right.
2000, when I was in the thick of having my own business, because I was wearing way too many hats. I was the salesperson, I was the spec writer, I was the drafter, I was the designer, the marketing person. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to become an EOS implementer. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but I loved running my own business. I was winning work, things were going great, had some really nice projects under my belt, but I had hit a ceiling and I just didn't know how to grow the business. You talk about strategy being my number one strength. I really didn't. I didn't know. And, in architecture school, they don't teach you how to run a business. And I was missing that component. So that's one of the reasons why I closed my business down, and I took this amazing design project manager job in Las Vegas with MGM Resorts. And I really learned about the business of design working at a large casino company.
Yeah, it looked like you pivoted. You were part of MGM Mirage Designs, based on what it said in your LinkedIn. So, I
Yep.
mean, the two things about your kind of journey with your own company was the biggest surprise that you had to wear so many hats, or was there another kind of aha, like after you were in it for 4 6 months, you're like, oh my God, I never knew about this. What was this for you?
My biggest aha was wearing so many hats. And then how do I peel off those hats? What do I, if there's one hat in particular, what do I do to peel off and find somebody. Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach, he has written a book and it's called Who Not How. And the idea is that not how am I going to get it done? Who can I hire to do this for me? And again, through my EOS journey of the last 5.5 years, that is one of those aha moments of inadvertently, I was forced as a business owner of an architecture firm to figure out my who was going to help me do something, not how was I going to get it done.
Right.
And I really think that a lot of small business owners, well, just business owners in general, let's put it that way, they have this, well, nobody else can do it better than I can, so I've got to do it. Well, really? Or are you just saying that because maybe you got a little bit of a control saboteur from living in your head?
Right.
So I think that was my biggest aha in that. And then I just started asking people, how did you deal with this? How did you handle it? And really reaching out to my contacts and learning from them. That's why we have mentors, right? That's why
Sure.
we have friends in
Right.
business.
Would that have been your biggest advice as your own EOS implementer at the time? Like, you don't have to do everything, hire out.
Yeah. And Jeff, I work with a lot of businesses that are 10 million and less, and they have trouble not only hiring and finding good quality people, but a lot of times I think we get into this habit of we're looking for a unicorn. And I recently learned terminology. It's called job carving. I had not heard that before. And the idea is, what is it that you need? What is it you're looking for? And being very specific on, I need someone that can do the invoicing, manage my expenses, and whatever that third thing may be. Okay. Are they all three the same skill sets? Yeah, they pretty much are. Okay. Then that, I'm being crystal clear then on that role and responsibility that I need. Like business development, sales, and marketing. I think a lot of times companies glump those together. Well, they're not. You and I both know that they're three separate entities, but we look for that. And I think even if you have a business where you need a person to do X, then just hire somebody part time to only do X. And don't try and glump a bunch of things on that person
Right.
because it's not the same skill set.
Right.
Executive assistant that is handling your calendar and your emails, they are not the same person that should be posting your social media posts or writing your social media
Right.
posts. But it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's just being crystal clear on what do you need and what are the 5 roles and responsibilities, and then hire for that. Don't hire for a unicorn.
So Sonia, were you looking actively to go back in a W-2 position, or did the MGM Mirage approach you?
I was actively looking for a W-2 position. Yes. Back in the day, there was, again, when the internet was just getting started, there was a weekly email that I got from the American Institute of Architects. And at the bottom, they always had job postings. And one day I happened to see that and I went, that's me. That is exactly me. And we were visiting Vegas and I threw my hat in the ring and they said, yes, we want to talk to you. And they offered me a job 2 months later.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is going to be magical. This is a whole new opportunity to work on larger projects and just really learn more about the business of design. And that was really a fantastic experience for me.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. If you're having challenges taking your business to the next level, if you want to augment your leadership team, or prepare your company for increased growth, profitability, and an eventual successful exit, we have seasoned executives from every C-suite position ensuring a perfect fit for your needs and the dynamics of your industry. You will work with senior leaders who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. They can help your business in specific services such as strategic planning, executive leadership coaching, financial management, corporate governance, marketing, sales management, and many other advisory solutions vital to your business success. That's exechq.com. To learn more, go to exechq.com or email Jeff Palacio at jeff.palacio@exechq.com.
Yeah, so look, post your own company, Jury Designs. Mirage sounded like a great project. You were at Burns and McDonnell,
Mhm.
and one of the best companies in Kansas City to work for. It looked like HOK,
Mhm.
another kind of legendary architectural firm. What was the kind of impetus now after you kind of worked for 3 or 4 firms in the beginning, had your own company, Jury Designs, and then for what, I don't know how long, probably about 14, 13 years, several companies, and then tell us the journey to becoming an EOS implementer.
I was happy in Vegas. I loved working for MGM Resorts, and I also worked for Gensler, which is the number one architecture design firm in the world. And again, the business of design and the power of design, and looking at architecture through a business lens, yes, still a design lens, was really amazing. I had a dear friend that was working at Burns and Mac, and at the time, Burns, they had a lot of projects in the Middle East, in Doha, Qatar, and they just didn't have individuals that had like billion-dollar project experience, if that makes sense. And so they were looking for somebody to work on one of their projects in the Middle East. I interviewed with them, and I kept joking with my friend Randy, and I said, Randy, I'm happy. I'm happy. And they made me an offer, and I was like, this might be a really good move. And it checked the boxes, and I came back to Kansas City, and I started working on these projects in the Middle East, and I never even thought about working on projects in the Middle East. And it was really fantastic. I got to work with some amazing architects. Antoine Pradoc is one, and it just was really an eye opener for these projects that Her Highness and His Highness were building to rebuild and educate their community. One was called Education City, and the other one was Musharraf, Heart of Doha. And they were creating this living, working environment for their people that was also going to become a tourist destination at some point. So that was just really amazing to work on these large projects. And when I mean large projects, so the project that I was working on with, 100 other people, it was the size of the plaza. So imagine building a brand new plaza
Wow.
with four-story buildings and then a four-story below parking infrastructure
Wow.
and garage. And so that was really amazing to have that. And it's now built and it's successful and people are living in it and using it. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and just for reference for non-Kansas City people, the plaza is, I think, built in the 20s, kind of the first outdoor shopping mall in the United
Mhm.
States. So very Spanish architecture, but a very cool place to go usually. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
So, Burns and Mac, and then, I wanted to do something different, so I went to work for 360 Architecture, which got bought out by HOK and worked on a lot of college athletic facilities. I had an opportunity to go to work for another company here in town and went to work for them, and as I say in EOS, if anybody understands entrepreneurial operating system, it's about being the right person in the right seat. And I just wasn't the right fit for the company. And I wear this like a badge of honor. Jeff, you and many other people can relate. And I got fired 33 years and I got fired from
right.
architecture. I had heard about EOS a few years prior and I had read the book Traction and Get a Grip. And I just came home and I sat on the sofa. My husband was still traveling. And I said, I'm going to become an EOS implementer. I've been talking about it for 2 years. I want to try it. Let's do it. And so I burned the bridge, as they say, and enrolled in EOS and went to boot camp in January of 2019. And I haven't looked back. I absolutely love being an EOS implementer and working with businesses. I've worked with over 35 businesses to date, and it is amazing to see what that system and the operating system does for a company. And, I love your opening, Jeff, for the corporate couch, and, the guy that's talking about uh, people and, and believing in your people, and then the profits will come and so on and so forth. And
Right.
EOS really makes that happen if the client really leans all in and uses
Right.
it and uses the tools and the process. And that is really magical to watch that happen with a company.
So, did you have exposure to EOS prior? I mean, obviously, Gino Wickman's books are out there, Traction, Rocket Fuel, Getting a Grip. But I mean, was there some company you were at that you exposed you to it,
No,
or you just said just a God whisper, right? Or
yeah.
something, probably. Yeah.
Um, a girlfriend of mine, we were playing golf, and she is an EOS implementer in Kansas City. And she had given me the books. I read them and devoured them. And she said, you could become an EOS implementer. You don't have to stay in architecture. And I looked at her and I said, oh my God, you are absolutely right. and and I said, "Why not?" And so I went through, the webinar, the information to understand what it is about, the investment, the time commitment, and everything. And I absolutely love the abundance-minded community. I'm continually learning every single day. I'm reading a new book almost every month, and I just love what it has provided not only for me, but for my clients.
We talked earlier about the assessments, but I could see why you're a really great EOS implementer. Fairly high Colby Fact Finder 6, which is strategy, being strategic, and Clifton Strengths Finders as your number one strength. And then also on the Colby, a fast start, which is the whole entrepreneurial growth and futuristic thinking and all
Right.
that. So yeah, it's amazing to me because besides just seeing you and catching up on the conversation today, it's just, I mean, I've been for you over 100 guests, and I think you're just 33 years as basically an architect, and
Right.
doing that, and then just like pivoting right into business consulting, helping small businesses succeed. What was the biggest surprise in that pivot for you when you first started in your EOS journey?
I think how easy it was for me to make the switch. And here, the reason for that is for the last 15 years of my career, well, since I started my business in 97, I was serving as a coach, a teacher, and a facilitator with projects, if you think about it. So as a facilitator, as the architect, you're typically in charge of running the project, which means I was the liaison back to the client, or I was the liaison to all the different consultants. And yes, I'm one person. There was a team, but there was always someone that was kind of leading the charge. And so if you think about a project, a design, an architectural project, it's not unlike a small business. You've got to have that hierarchy. And my job was the facilitator, to herd the project, making sure it was staying on budget, making sure that the schedule was happened, maybe making sure that we were staffed appropriately, making sure that the consultants were keeping up. And it's really was about facilitating and kind of moving the pieces around of the on the chessboard or checkerboard. Maybe it was more the checkerboard. Anyway, that was really surprising to me, and how easy the facilitation and the coaching and the teaching was. And then the ability to learn something new. And I'm a sponge. I just, that's the part of my quick start. I really love to dig in and learn something new. What I've really enjoyed about EOS is while I'm 5.5 years into it, I don't know everything. And
Sure.
each day I learn something new, and I can take that wisdom to my clients to help them to learn something new. I still have room to grow, and I think that's what's exciting is every single day I get to grow and learn.
I love the reading the one book a month. Is that an EOS thing or is that a Sonya Jury thing? I'm going to read one book a month.
That's a Sonya Jury thing, and Jeff, I had a friend that is a voracious reader, and he would always say, "Yeah, I've got about 3 books going." And I thought, "How can you do that?" Well, I kinda do that now. I'll have
Yeah.
my fun book,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then I'll have
right.
my business book.
Yeah. The one you can read right before bed because it's not going to make you start thinking about things. You just, yeah.
Exactly, and, I keep looking to my left, because I've got all my books that I've
Yeah.
read over my 5.5 years, and like
Yeah.
everybody else, I have
Yeah.
my list of books that,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, there's about 12 books there that I
Yeah.
haven't read. I gotta get to it."
Some recent favorites or some all-time favorites, two or three. What would those be for the audience?
The Psychological Safety Playbook, and it's called Lead More Powerfully by Being More Human. And what I appreciate it's a quick read. I don't even think there's barely 150 pages to this book. And what I love about it is that the authors were really smart in how they wrote it because they kind of give you some role play and verbiage to use,
Hmm.
which a lot of times I find my clients have a really hard time starting the conversation, if you know what I mean. If they have to have a fierce or a tough conversation, that has really been difficult. And this has helped them with that. And then the other one that I really, really, I'm looking for it because I was going to show it to you. It's called Selling Boldly, and it's a book by Alex Goldfein. It's about applying the new science of positive psychology for sales. And what I appreciate about the book that Alex has written, and he's writing his sixth book right now, is that again, it applies the context of making the sales call, but applying the psychology in a different way and how to do the selling. I think when people think of selling, they think of the auto salesperson, which I think is a horrible
I know. So
analogy.
bad.
Yeah, but, he just gives you some really great scripts and some practical knowledge. When you read it, you go, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, then why aren't we doing it?" Because
Right.
it's habits that we don't. And then the last one that has really been the biggest change in my life, other than all the EOS books, it's called Positive Intelligence, and it's by Shirzad Sharmin. That more than any book, Jeff, has been the biggest game changer for my mind and for when I introduce it to my clients and what it does for them.
So what was it in Positive Intelligence? I know it's probably a 300 page plus book, but kind of if you could highlight kind of what were those things that made it such a dramatic change in your life?
Yes, so positive intelligence is it measures the mental fitness of your mind, how much your brain is your friend versus your enemy.
Hmm.
And Jeff, you have heard the posturing syndrome, imposter syndrome, and those negative thoughts that live in everybody's head. And what I love about positive intelligence is it's like EOS. It's an operating system for your mind. EOS is an operating system for your business.
Yeah.
Positive intelligence, or PQ, is an operating system for your mind. And so, what he does, he walks you through the assessment of learning what the saboteurs are that live in your mind. There's 10 of them. And then, once you understand them and you can notice them, then you can control them. And it has made such a difference. I'm studying right now to become a positive intelligence coach, And I use it with my clients when I see something a little wonky in my leadership team. And it helps me to understand them better so that I can facilitate in session with them better. And I cannot say enough good things about what it's done for me.
Sonia, I really love the analogy, that EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System in this book, which I obviously have to get, this positive intelligence book. This PQ is the operating system for the mind. But I'm assuming you're fairly unique in the EOS universe of implementers using kind of this combination. Tell the listeners a little bit more about it.
One of the things that we see as a coach for our leadership teams, we can easily see where some of the holes, the gaps are within the company. And as a coach, as you know, our job is not to point those holes out. Our job is to ask questions, to get curious. And well, why is that? Well, why is that happening? Well, how's the rest of you feel about that? So we're asking questions to help dig into and determine what the root issue is. And so, EOS does help with that. But then there's also the other layer that we have six human beings in a room and we bring our own baggage, that imposter syndrome or those negative thoughts that could be in our head, and we bring that to the session room. And if I, as a coach, can understand, well, maybe Susan has her number one saboteur is hyperachiever, and Frank over here, their number one saboteur is victim. They couldn't be more polar opposites. But if I can see that and understand it, it allows me to ask questions in a different way in order to facilitate the group to a decision, if that makes sense. Because you've got to look at the individuals and then how that comes together as a collective group. For example, I have a client and I could not understand why they were so negative all the time. It was evading me. And I asked them to take the positive intelligence assessment. And when they did, and I got everybody's results and I looked at it, I went, oh, now I understand it. So they were hyperachievers, which meant nothing was ever good enough. They would achieve something and then they would just kind of like, done, moving on. They wouldn't stop to like settle and go, we got this done together. That's fantastic. Let's just settle on that for a couple weeks. No, they were already ready to move on to the next thing. And because they also had restless, it fed into that hyperachiever. And nothing was ever going to be good enough. And in EOS, we talk about that entrepreneurial spirit of 80% is good enough. It doesn't have to have the pink bow on it. And when I shared that with them, that folks, because of your saboteurs, they are taking over your minds. And if it would be really hard for me to work for you as an employee because I could never please you because you're never going to be happy. And when I shared that with them, and not in a horrible manner, that this is an awareness tool, you could just see the light bulbs go on with every single one around the table. And they went, oh my God, you're absolutely right. And then they said, we need to hold ourselves accountable. We need to be better. We need to celebrate. We need to, when something is done, we need to just stop and celebrate and let it sit for a bit. And then we move on to the next thing. So you've heard of the expression, sometimes we have to slow down to go fast. And that's what that helped them understand as a
Right.
leadership team.
Yeah, I think no, I love that. That's phenomenal. In terms of using that, it's kind of that mindset personality thing with the, operating system for business. So That's great. Well, I want to talk about your book. You wrote, it was published March 18th of this year, 2024. Mom Forgot My Birthday, A Daughter's Journey Through Alzheimer's. So when we saw each other last, we shared that, my dad had early onset Alzheimer's in his late 40s when I was around 10 years old. And then, he passed from the disease. So, I've seen what it can do. And I know a lot of people, baby boomers, are going through it with their parents. But tell us a little bit about the book, why you wrote it. Did you ever consider, did you ever have aspirations of being an author, or was it kind of like EOS? All of a sudden, I'm going to be an EOS implementer.
The journey that my mom was on, it was a 5-year journey. Really, Jeff, the idea came about when I was in the last few weeks with her of her time on this earth, and I just started keeping a daily diary. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe it was because I needed something to occupy my time while I was sitting at her bed. I think the hard part for me was I'm a fact finder. I love knowledge. And I was trying to find information about death and dying. And I don't mean it in a morbid way, but an educational way. What happens to the body, and when they're put on morphine, what does that do? And all of those things. And I just thought, why is there nothing out there that shares this part of life? We have this taboo that we can't talk about death. Well, it's a part of life. And then thinking about how my mom's journey started, she was diagnosed Mother's Day of May of 2012. Her second husband, Walter, he passed away almost 7 months later after she was diagnosed. And they had not put their wills together. I mean, all of these pieces that just fell. And because I was the closest relative, if you will, fell into my lap. And I'm not saying that, I'm not looking for pity or, job well done, Sonia. I just don't think that people think about, what am I leaving behind for my loved one to pick up the pieces with? I had the idea. I was sitting with Mona and Robin one day, and I said, I really want to write this book. I don't know what it's going to look like. I just have some ideas. And they introduced me to Lisa Allen, and Lisa was my guiding light and my editor as I was writing my book. And I put together, as Annie Lamont talks about, you write your shitty first draft. And that's exactly what I did. And Lisa took that first draft and she came back and she said, you have something here. This has the makings of a book. Here are the next steps. And so I put in the work, took it to the next level, gave it back to her. She reread it, did her edits, came back, and she said, oh my God, you have really done the work. Now we got to do it just a little bit further. So I think I ended up with 4 or 5 total drafts. And then I found a publisher. My friend Bob did the artwork, the cover. It came about. And Jeff, in a million years, I never thought I would put author behind my name. In a million years, I didn't realize how much this has already helped people,
Yeah.
and just the few people that have read it. And what I love is that it impacts somebody differently. Each person, depending upon where they are in their life, if that makes sense, their age, how it has made a difference in their lives already. And I couldn't be more humbled and grateful for that.
I was young when my father had it, so my stepmom, he was. It was actually the day after my brother got married, and when I was 12, that next day he went to the VA hospital, and he died there about it was 7.5 years later. So I mean, so I wasn't really part of his caregiving team, but it's just you know. Such a terrible, terrible disease. So thank you for putting that together. I mean, and creating that, and I definitely have been recommending it to friends that are going through it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I like what I mean, and you're transparent too, because it's not a how-to book. You said it's a how not to. And I started reading and I looked at the chapters, and you kind of have it in three parts. Part one, the early stage Alzheimer's. Part two, kind of the moderate stage, and the part three, the latter stages, late stage. Was there? I noticed that like early stage had 20 chapters. Part two had like four, and then I think there was 7 chapters for the late stage. Was there kind of a thought process behind that, or what was the?
It just magically happened, Jeff, and the reason I say that is, so when I was putting together my 4th draft, I went back to the Alzheimer's website because, again, in 2012, there wasn't a lot of information out there. We have, 12 years later, there's so much more information and finally studies and we're understanding a little bit more about the disease. And one of the things that they had put on their website were the 3 stages of Alzheimer's. And as I'm sitting here looking at my book and all my chapters are laid out on the dining room table, I just went, "Oh my god, that's how my book has come together. Here's stage 1, here's stage 2, and here's stage 3." And stage 1 is when a lot of the nasty stuff happens. Because again, if they have been diagnosed, they have been told they have dementia or is Alzheimer's, so they're processing in their brain. And then maybe they're being moved from their home that they've lived in for 40 years to an assisted living facility. And I mean, you know, we know what it's like to be sent to college and live on our own in a dorm room for something fun. But imagine being 75 years old and, oh, I'm now going to go live here. And what do you mean you're not going to stay with me? What do you mean I'm going to be in this place with all these people that are strange that I don't know about? So it's the how not to, because I do believe that there are better ways to do it. So that's how the book started becoming into the stages. And then, when she got to stage 2, it was just kind of rinse and repeat. I mean, there was a little bit more of consistency of her care, but there wasn't these, oh my gosh, things, henny penny, the sky is falling kind of things. And then with late stage, again, she, she still always recognized me, so I'm very grateful for that, but there wasn't much changing day by day by day other than she just continued to deteriorate each day, and she continued to stop eating, eating less and less and less, and so that's when, she fell that last time, and there wasn't anything that could be done surgically, and she would have just been stuck in a wheelchair or the bed on pain meds. I mean, that's not the existence that I knew that my mom wanted. And so that's when my brother and I said, it's time to let mom go. And that it's not easy. It is still not easy. It's still my angst in my inner being when I say that still exists to this day. And I know it was the right decision, but it's still not an easy decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, so sorry for your mom's passing and that journey, but grateful that you've turned it into a positive to help others by writing this book. So thank you, Sonia, for that. That's
You're very welcome. And Jeff, going back to positive intelligence, I did not have positive intelligence when I was going through this with my mother. And writing this book during my positive intelligence journey, I look at this book and I see my saboteurs. I see the negative thoughts that were in my head when when I was taking care of my mother. I was you know, not caregiving, but being her shining light, I guess. And that's what I talk about with the how not to, because there are things in here that I don't want to say that I'm ashamed. There are things in here that I do feel some regret that I was not there empathetically more for her. And that's why I put some of those things in there.
if there's kind of one piece of advice you can give to an adult child going through an Alzheimer dementia journey with a parent, what would that be?
It is your journey with them, and what works for someone else may not work for you. And know that what you are doing is loving and you are doing the right thing for your parent or loved one. And please don't beat yourself up. There's so much guilt, anxiety, and shame that goes along with the journey, or at least it was in my head. And looking back on it, I can see how I was not the best. And I understand how that feels to somebody else. So just know that it's your journey and you are doing right by your loved one, and nobody else can tell you any differently. Just know that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm sure that this will help many people that listen in. Speaking about helping people, Sonya, there's two groups of people I love to help with great leadership advice from great leaders like yourself. One's that recent college graduate that is now in the ones that graduated in May of 2024. It's now July 1st. They're still out there looking for a job, wanting to start their career. What advice would you have for them as they start their first professional job search and career?
Find something that makes you happy. Find something that you are passionate about. In EOS, we talk about get it, want it, and capacity for the job. Get it. Do you get in your mental capacity what it takes to do that job? Do you want it? Do you have that fire in your belly that you're so passionate about doing that? And do you have the capacity, the physical, mental training, whatever it takes? You've got to GWC it and really find something that makes you happy. Because, as Jeff, as you know, life is so short. And I just find so many people that are doing a job. Yes, they're doing a job to pay for their parent, to pay for their family and to support their family. But I I can't imagine doing a job that you are miserable at doing. And I hate that people feel like they're forced to do something because that's all that's available to them. I believe that there's always something else out there. But to be realistic also, if you choose to, hey, I'm going to be a painter, great. Be the best painter that you can be, but know that you may have to do some other work in the meantime to support yourself or your family. But if that's what you want to do, then go do it.
Right.
I just think that we impose, and again, I don't have children, so I just don't want other people. Don't impose your wishes on somebody else. Go do what you want to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then the next group is, while anyone can be a leader, you don't have to have people under you in an org chart to be a leader in a company. Once you do get that promotion, that's a career path you want to take. What advice would you have for them when they first get that first managerial position where now they're responsible for a group of people? What would you say to that group?
I would say find a coach. Find somebody that is outside of your business. Find a coach that can help you, that can coach you up to be a leader and a manager. Leadership plus management equals accountability. And we are not trained as humans to manage other people. And I'm not talking about micromanaging or anything, that. Um, Look yourself in the mirror and say, where am I short on skills and what kind of business coach could help me with said skills? And even when you think nobody is watching you, they are watching you. And just show up with a smile on your face, be as positive and abundant mindset as you can, because that is infectious and it filters out to everybody else.
Thank you for that. I love that advice, Sonya. Your gift to Kansas City, as well as people that will go on this Alzheimer's journey with a parent. So thank you so much for being on the Corporate Couch today.
Jeff, thank you. I appreciated it and loved every minute of it. Thank you.
I so love talking to Sonya. She's just a fantastic, fantastic person. She's just so her energy and just she just person talks about getting fired, and she just she never loses the tone. She's not embarrassed by it, which I don't think you should be, but she's like, yeah, I wore it as a badge of honor, but there were so many things for me. And we had to pause this recording because, her book about her mom's journey in for Alzheimer's, the name of the book, Mom Forgot My Birthday, Daughter's Journey Through Alzheimer's. I mean, obviously I went through it with my dad. I wasn't a caretaker because, he had early onset when I was 10 years old. But I mean, and then her whole story about the book and her mother's 5-year journey and all that, just we really had to pause to talk about it. But
the interview went in
yeah,
so many different directions, and every one of them was good. Any one of those could have been a good
so
one
many.
Anyway, so.
I mean, from the KU, Kansas University, 1988, winning the basketball title, that I probably partied with her in Westport, in the Kansas City, one of the bar districts, to one of the most dramatic career pivots in corporate couch history out of our 100+ guests. I think Angela Krebs went from a ADP district sales manager to a CEO. This was very similar. Sonya was 33 years as an architect, part of that 8 years owning her own architectural firm, but then she pivots into being an EOS implementer, business consulting. I think it was just phenomenal.
It's like, where did that come from after being an architect all that time? You don't think of it like that.
First architect on the corporate couch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe Mark Schaefer had as many, but most book recommendations. I love that positive intelligence book too. That operating system for the mind, and how there's up to 10 mind saboteurs that could prevent you from kind of optimizing your thinking and all that. Just so many, like you said, so many different things that she talked about that I really love. So what did you get out of the conversation with Sonya?
It was great. It was almost like it was about 5 or 6 different interviews, one after another. And any one of them, we could have expanded into an episode all by itself. So I thought it was a remarkable interview. She's a remarkable person. One of the things that she mentioned early in the interview was she was talking about her advice to recent college graduates, where she said, you need to work for at least 3 different companies. You work for a small company, work for a medium-sized company, and work for a large company. And then after you've had that experience in all of those, because they'll be completely different experiences, then figure out where do you fit the best, or where do you operate the best, where do you like the type of work that you like best out of all of those 3. I have a very similar philosophy, but I position it just a little bit differently. The way that I put it is, do you want to be a small fish in a large pond or a large fish in a small pond? Because you have an opportunity to do both of those, and both of those will be completely different experiences. I did both of them at one time or another. I started out being a large fish in a small pond. I worked for a small manufacturing company, and I was literally the boss. And I got to boss people around. I got IBM to take me to lunch. I got all the neat perks about being the boss. And then later on, I moved to working for a huge telecommunications company where I was a tiny fish. I was just a data analyst, if you will, in a company that had 60,000 employees. And I got to be the small fish in a large pond. And what I discovered, I never would have thought it before, because I thought that I would like being the boss. The problem was I sucked at it. I wasn't any good at it. But when I found out that I could be the small fish in a large pond, all of a sudden I was given all these tools, all these toys that I could play with that we could never have when I worked for the small company. When I worked for the small company, if we got Lotus 1, 2, 3 at the time, we thought we were high tech. But when I went to work for a large company, I was the small fish in a large pond. I literally could pick any software tool that I wanted to work with, any data analytics tool, anything. And I was given the freedom and the responsibility to figure out the problem that I was working on using whatever tool that I had out of their huge toolbox of things to play with. And wow, that was refreshing. The thing that I want to emphasize, though, is that may or may not be your journey, you as the listener to this podcast. But I hope that you measure both the experiences and come to the decision about which one is more appropriate for you, whether you want to be a large fish or a small fish. and make the appropriate decision in your particular career. There is no right or wrong answer. I found out what was right for me. That may or may not be what's right for you.
Yeah, and you sucked at being a manager because
I did.
You said it a couple of times. You were bossing people around. You weren't leading them. You were bossing them around.
Oh, I could give you the whole interview of everything that I did wrong. Everything that I did wrong as a boss.
Well, it's a journey. We all made.
But the funny thing is, I have no desire to go back and fix it.
No, yeah.
You know, I'm done with that. Yes, I know what I did wrong. Bury that hatchet. Let's don't go back.
We've had 4 corporate collaborations together, and yes, I know we all know Joe's strengths and what Joe does well.
And I was the boss in none of those, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, Joe, what leadership wisdom would you like to share to our great listeners today?
Today, we are going to go to that great philosopher from television named Dr. Sheldon Cooper. And Dr. Sheldon Cooper one time said the following. He said, "While I subscribe to the many worlds theory, which posits the existence of an infinite number of Sheldons and an infinite number of universes, I assure you that in none of them I am dancing, although the math would suggest that in a few of them I'm a clown made out of candy."
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.